Thank you for joining us. My name is Michaela Vrazdova, and I'm an associate at Scott Legal PC. Today, we are going to spend some time talking about the EB-5, or so-called $1 million green card. We'll go over some recent changes, the key requirements, and just some common questions we get about the EB-5 green card. So a few things before we get started. So Scott Legal is a full-service immigration law firm, and we assist individuals pursuing various types of visas and green cards, family-based, employment-based, and investment-based green cards. And our main specialty is assisting entrepreneurs and investors. And we do process a high number of EB-5 green cards, so we are here to help you if you would like to pursue this option. We will continue to have this webinar series, and we will have at least 2 webinars a month on different visa topics. And so please do sign up for future webinars. At the end of this webinar, we'll send you out a few things. So we'll send the PowerPoint, we'll send our EB-5 visa guide, and as I mentioned, we'll also send a link where you can sign up for additional future webinars. This webinar will also be available on our YouTube channel, and we do encourage you to subscribe and hit the notification button, as we often upload immigration videos on the YouTube channel. We'll also send you a link where you can set up a consultation if you would like to discuss your particular situation. Today, we are lucky to have Ian Scott here to speak about the EB-5 green card. Ian is the founder of Scott Legal, and he has a vast amount of experience processing EB-5 green cards. My name is Michaela Vrazdova, and I will be the moderator for the meeting. If you do have any question as we speak, you can type the question in the Q&A or the chat box, and we will get to all questions as we talk or at the end of the presentation. So why don't we get started? So Ian, the EB-5 program has gone through some changes over the last year, especially. So could you describe some of those changes to us?
Great, thank you very much, Michaela, and great to be here. And yes, the EB-5 program really has gone through a number of different changes, and I'd say that the majority of the relevant changes started in March of 2022. Before that, there were some pauses in the regional center program, and but then Congress passed a new law which implemented a number of different changes. They set a higher investment amount. The investment amount was a little lower, and we'll go through the details of that. They also implemented a number of other changes. They made it a little bit more difficult for someone to be able to apply for the EB-5 under the lower investment amount threshold. They also eliminated the ability for when people want to do a pooled investment and invest, let's say 3 or 4 investors want to get together and start a business, and each of them want a green card. They eliminated the ability to do that, and allowed that, that's only permitted for regional centers. So eliminated that under the direct investment program. So really a number of different changes, but now I think that the program is in a great place where the investment amount is set, the rules are kind of confirmed, and one of the other big changes that they made is they really reduced the risk of running into the same types of issues that happened in 2021, 2022, because what had happened back in 2021 was the regional center program at the end of June was paused because it wasn't reauthorized by Congress, and it stayed that way until the new rules came out in March. But I think that a lot of people were left in limbo during that time period, and the new rules have really addressed some of those shortcomings or deficiencies, such that we don't expect that to happen happen again.
Perfect, thank you. And Ian, so how can someone qualify for the EB-5 green card? What are the key requirements?
Sure. So the key requirements are maybe broken out into I'd say three different parts. So one is investing money. So you're either going to invest 800,000 or $1,050,000. And the difference between those two is if you are investing $800,000, it means that your business is located in what's called a targeted employment area. So that's either a rural area as defined by the local jurisdiction based on population, or an area where the unemployment rate is 1.5 times the national average. So if you meet those criteria, then you can invest the lower amount of 800,000. And that's whether, and I'm going to talk a little bit about regional center versus direct investment in a second. And the other criteria, the other amount is 1,550,000, and everyone else hits that. It has to invest that particular amount. Now, the other criteria has to do with job creation, and what the EB-5 program requires is that you create 10 full-time jobs, and they're very specific and particular about the types of jobs that have to be created, and it has to be 10 of them. So very, I think one of the big differences between this program and, for example, the E2 program is that it is much more objective. The investment amount is objective, and the job creation number is objective. Now, probably the other big part of this program has to do with the investment, and you do have to show where the money came from. And the reason when we talk about E2s, a lot of the time we don't really focus on the source of funds requirement as much, but with EB-5, the source of funds requirement becomes really the fundamental part of the application, and you really have to provide in a fair amount of detail, explanation and documentation related to where the money came from. And this is has not been and will not be, it's not an easy exercise. Usually the source of funds are quite complicated and can be hundreds of pages, sometimes even thousands of pages of documentation, and something that the government really focuses on and scrutinizes. So definitely I'd say that I'd break it up into those three pieces: that there's the investment amount, there's job creation, and then source of funds, making sure that you have sufficient documentation to show where the 800,000 or $1,050,000 came from.
Perfect. And Ian, you mentioned a regional center versus the direct investment. So what is kind of like the main difference between these two? And then what are some characteristics of typical investor profiles for each of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So a regional there, kind of two ways that you can approach EB-5, and one is regional center. And think of a regional center as, let's say that there's a someone who's trying to raise capital, and they are building a hotel, for example, or a large office building, and they may want to raise capital from investors. So they could start a regional center project and apply through USCIS to get regional center standing, and then they can ask for money from a number of different investors. So let's say they have 100 different investors, each of which are going to give them $800,000. Then that's the money that's going to be used to build this hotel or build this particular office building. Now, so with that particular endeavor, the investment is very much a passive investment. The investor just has to kind of give the regional center the money. The regional center is going to be responsible for the job creation, for building the hotel or building the office building, and the investor is just going to really be able to sit back and hopefully in several years get their green card. Now, the profile then of someone like this is someone who wants to just have a passive investment, and really wants somebody that is someone else that's in the driver's seat, that is running and doing things. Now, the downside to a regional center is that the person who's building the hotel knows that the person wants a green card, so the return that they're willing to give is very low. And in fact, the return, it would be negative return, because usually the fees associated with regional centers are between $30,000 and $60,000. So when you factor in the fees, the person probably would have a negative investment return. So it's not a great investment in terms of making money, but it can be something that gets you a green card. Now, contrast that to A direct investment, so someone can, let's say start their own business or have their own business and invest the 800,000 or the 1,050,000. And again, how much is going to depend on where the business is located. And they may want to, do things on their own. And the profile of that particular person is someone who does want to run their own business and wants to kind of maintain control over, over the direction and creation of the business. So an entrepreneur, for example, is going to be a typical profile. Now, the requirements are very similar. Requirements are similar in the sense of you have to invest the amount and you have to create the requisite U.S. jobs and you have to show where the money came from. But really, two very different profiles for investors. The other kind of interesting thing to note regarding those changes that I talked about is that the changes never impacted, or the pause in the program that I mentioned only related to the regional center program. The direct investment program is one that does not have to be reauthorized by Congress. That's already in the statutes and doesn't have to be reauthorized by Congress. It's the regional center program that does. So even when the program was paused, the regional center program was paused, the direct investment program, still continued, and people were filing petitions based on that. So the two very different profiles of EB-5 investors. We do see that probably 90 or so percent of the people who apply for EB-5 are regional center investors. But we are doing a lot of, people who move from E2 to green card. We are doing more and more direct investment EB-5s for individuals, in particular individuals who are in the United States on an E2 visa.
Perfect, thank you. And how does one apply for the EB-5 green card? What kind of petitions do you have to file, and do you file them with USCIS or at a consulate, or how does it work?
Yeah, so there are a number of different petitions that have to be filed. So the first petition is an I-526 petition. So that's the petition shows that you actually have invested the money, the 800,000 or 1,050,000, and shows that you're going to be in a position to create the 10 full-time jobs. So it's really getting at, have you met the individual requirements of the EB-5 program? That's a petition also where you show the source of funds, so the documentation related source of funds. If you're investing in a regional center, really the only piece of documentation that the client has to pull together is the documentation related to source of funds. The rest of the documentation is going to come from the regional center. If you're doing a direct investment, then the documentation is going to be your documentation related to the business plan, the commitments that you have, etc. Now, the next form that has to be filed is either, if the person's in the United States, then they can file what's called an I-485 form. The I-485 form is the form which is really the application, the procedural part of the green card application. If you're in the United States, you can file that. And the great thing about the changes in March is that now the I-485 form can be, as long as the visa category is current, which I'm not going to spend that much time talking about what that means in this presentation, but as long as your visa category is current, and for most countries it is, every country except for India and China, the visa categories are current. If the visa category is current, then you can file the I-485 petition at the same time as the I-526 petition. So, and the great thing about the I-485 petition is it gives you the ability to stay in the United States, and you can also apply for work authorization and travel authorization, such that you can stay in the United States while this petition is being adjudicated. So you can stay, live, work, travel while the petition is being adjudicated. So that's was a great change from in March, because in the past you could only file the I-485 petition after the I-526 petition had been approved, and I-526 petitions are taking 3 to 4 years to be approved. So that's it was a significant, you weren't afforded any real benefit until the approval. Then after the I-485 is filed, and let's say I-526, I-485 are approved, and you get the green card, then 2 years after you get the green card, you have to file an I-829 petition, which is a petition which is to remove the conditions on the green card. So really, You're showing the US government that you have actually created the 10 full-time jobs that you said that you were going to create. So those are really a rundown of the different petitions that have to be filed. And this process is a lengthy one. It's one that lasts over many, many years. But ultimately could lead to a green card.
And can you pay for like premium processing fee to kind of expedite any of these petitions, or is there anything else that can be done to kind of expedite the adjudication?
Yeah, so there isn't any premium processing for I-526 petitions. However, what you can do is if the petition drags on, like, maybe over the 2-year point, you can sue the U.S. government, and you can file what's called a mandamus petition, which basically compels the U.S. government to act. And we have done this on a number of occasions. Clients who have waited. We just had a mandamus approval for both an I-526 and an I-829 petition over the last month, where we sued the U.S. government, said it's an unreasonable amount of time that you're taking to process this petition, and the courts agreed with us. And then we ended up the government ended up adjudicating the petition, and it ended up adjudicating the petition, and in one case the person actually has the green card, where we filed the mandamus for the I-829 petition. The government adjudicated the petition and approved it, and in the other case the person's I-526 was approved, where we sued the U.S. government, and the government adjudicated their I-526 petition and approved it without an RFE. So really the only basis would be to sue the U.S. government.
Perfect. And after someone files the I-526, can they just kind of stay in the US until it's approved, or do they kind of need an underlying status to be able to stay?
Yeah, and it's a good question in terms of the categories being current, and I'll describe that a little bit. As long as your category is current, you can file an I-485 petition, which puts you in a period of authorized stay. Now, what happens with all visa petitions, or most visa petitions rather, the government only allocates a certain amount per year, and once that amount, then it's further broken down by country, and once that amount is reached, then there's a waiting list. So as long as you are, there's no waiting list, then you can, file a I-485 petition, which puts you in a period of authorized stay.
Perfect. And can you describe in a bit more detail the EB-5 steps when someone is investing in the regional center, like what has to be done?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first step, after someone signs an engagement letter, we send them a questionnaire. For when someone's doing EB-5 regional center, we set them up on our system, and then we set up a meeting with them to go through exactly what their source of funds is. Because with regional centers, the key to the petition is going to be their source of funds, and usually source of funds is complicated. So we go through that meeting, and then we document where the money is coming from, and then we develop an action plan with respect to how is it that we're going to exactly which documents is it that we need to accumulate, and then kind of make a customized list for the client to accumulate those particular documents. If it's a direct investment, then it's more complicated, because they not only have to do the source of funds, but they also have to do the business side. So we do something similar, where we get a sense of what it is they have, and then request certain documents from them.
And how can people find a regional center? Is there a website they can go to, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the regional centers, there is a website. There's a USCIS website that has, hundreds, maybe even over 1,000 regional centers now, because they do track them all. But I think the key thing with the regional center is immigration lawyers can never kind of recommend particular regional centers. And when you're looking for regional center, you either want to get an investment advisor to assist with that process, because it is an investment just like any other investment. Or the other thing you can do is, spend time researching the regional center to get a really good sense of, how long has the regional center been around? How many approvals have they had? Both I-526 and I-829 approvals. How many people have they returned the money to? Those can be really helpful. Those can be really helpful in terms of giving you a sense of is this a regional center that just started, because any regional center that hasn't been around for 2 years probably doesn't have any I-526 approvals, right? So that's going to be a riskier regional center versus there are some regional centers that have hundreds or maybe thousands of EB-5 approvals. And we have clients where the regional centers have actually returned the money to the clients. So the clients have the green card and they've actually returned the money to the clients. So definitely you do have to do your due diligence when looking at that.
And what would you say is the biggest challenge for investors, for EB-5 investors in regional centers?
It really is a source of funds, because it's I think that time and time again we describe to clients that this is it's an extremely intrusive, invasive process where we're asking for a lot of financial data, the government, we have a meeting this afternoon with a client who kind of thought it would be easy, produced a bunch of documentation, but we saw a number of different issues with the documentation that they produced and have to kind of go through it with them, because the government really does treat this as very, very much like an audit, they're going through it because the requirement is just to show that the money came from a legitimate source. However, they really take that to a fairly extreme degree when pulling this together.
And for the EB-5 investment, can the money come from a gift or a loan, or is that not allowed?
Yep, no, it can come from a gift or it can come from a loan. The only loan that's not permitted is a loan where the business itself is a security. So if it's an unsecured loan, that's not a problem. If it's a loan secured against your personal property, that's not a problem. And then also if it's a gift, if you do a gift, you should make sure that, because the petition takes so long to be adjudicated, you want to make sure that whatever appropriate gift taxes that are required to be paid have been actually paid, because if the petition is adjudicated 4 years down the road, the government may ask for documentation to make sure that it was a bona fide gift. Because if they got to the point 4 years down the road and they said, okay, well, show me that you say it's a gift, show me that you have paid the bona fide gift taxes, and if you can't, the government would question the legitimacy of whether or not it was actually a gift. So
Perfect, thank you. So now let's talk a bit more about the direct investment. So could you describe the steps when someone is investing?
Sure.
Through the direct investment, and does the money have to be spent, or can the investor kind of transfer the money on the company's bank account? How does that work?
Sure. So this is governed by, there's an interesting case. It's called Matter of Ho. And so Mr. Ho was an individual that was investing in the EB-5 direct program. And what he did was he put at that time, the investment amount was $500,000. And what he did was put $500,000 in a business bank account, and he set up an entity, and he had a 4-page business plan, I believe. Yeah, four-page business plan, and applied for the EB-5, and then they denied the case. And now Matter of Ho is used as a kind of a model for a number of different things. It's used as a model for the type of business, a model that really can describe what can work in a direct investment. Now, the first thing is going to be, if you have direct investment, you're going to need a very good business plan. So the business plan, Matter of Ho defines that business plan. It has to be a credible business plan, has to talk about the employees, when you plan on hiring them, a description, etc. Usually 3 to 4 pages won't be sufficient for that type of business plan. But then also the other thing that the courts didn't like in Matter of Ho was the fact that the money was just sitting in a bank account. It wasn't committed. So the government said that the person owns the company 100%. They could just take the money out whenever they felt like it. So the money doesn't have to be spent, but it has to be, at least be a large portion of it has to be committed. So you have lease or employees already or something like that. So there has to be something that looks like the money that is there is actually going to be spent. So those are, for when you're applying for an EB-5, all of those things are things that you have to to organize, and in some cases they're going to be organized already, because let's say, for example, you have a let's say, for example, you have an E2 visa and your business is already operating. Then it could be that you're investing the money and then you already have commitments. If you have employees, that's a commitment, right? If you're going to have to pay them salaries and things like that. If you have a lease agreement, that's a commitment. So those types of things. So really, it's pulling together that type of documentation. And then in addition to that, you still are going to have to show where the money came from. So that's still going to be some, the source of funds requirement applies to both the direct and regional center programs.
Perfect. And you mentioned an E2 visa. So can someone from an E2 move to EB-5? And what are some main kind of differences between these two programs?
Yeah, so we do like E2 to EB-5. It's a great way to get a green card. I'd say some of the differences are, one, some of the expenditures that kind of count towards the investment of E2 don't count to EB-5. So any money that you spend on legal and administrative fees can't be part of your investment. So let's say your investment is 800,000, you can't, part of that can't be legal, administrative fees, etc. The other thing is, any money that's paid to the owner. So let's say that you invested $800,000 in EB-5, and you paid yourself anything, any amount of money whatsoever, then you can't include that in the 800,000, right? Because that's money that just went back to you. So that's kind of another thing. I'd say another big thing is source of funds. For E2, there is a requirement for source of funds. However, it sounds the same on paper. However, it really is something that is, if you say source of funds is one, for E2 is one, it's 1,000 or million for EB-5. So EB-5, the source of funds requirement is quite complex. I would say that EB-5 probably doesn't require the business to be as advanced as E2, in the sense of you could have commitments in place. Like, let's say you were doing a restaurant and the restaurant door, like, let's say that you had commitments to build out the space and you had commitments to hire employees in the future, you could probably apply for an EB-5, whereas with E2 you definitely would want the restaurant to be the space to be built out and things like that, almost the door is almost ready to be open. I'd say maybe a little bit of difference in the business plan. The business plan for EB-5 definitely has to be more detail than the business plan for E2. So yeah, so I think those are definitely some of the differences between the two.
Perfect. And for EB-5, can multiple investors kind of pull together in one business and each of them get their own green card, or is this not allowed?
Only for regional centers, because it used to be that the direct investment could do this, but unfortunately, the one of the changes in March, which is unfortunately not a very positive change, one of the changes in March was that for direct investment, it's one green card per entity, so multiple people can't pool together.
And for the direct investment, what kind of items can you kind of include in the investment, and what you absolutely cannot include?
Yeah, so really, any of the things that are needed to get the business up and running, those can certainly be included in the investment amount. But really, the things that can't be, like money paid to yourself, money the other big one that can't be included is retained earnings. So let's say that you had an E2 business or something, and let's say that the business made $2 million like profit in 1 year, and then you use that money and you spent it, and then you said, okay, I spent $2 million and I want to apply for EB-5. That $2 million doesn't count because it was an investment. It was money that came from revenue, et cetera. So that's another thing that can't be included. So legal, administrative expenses, money paid to yourself, and then retained earnings are probably the big ones that can't be included.
And can you talk a little bit more about the business plan for the direct investment? How does it look, and is it similar to the E2 business plan, or is it kind of much more complex?
Yeah, I would say that the EB-5 business plan, we definitely pay more attention to the details in the business plan, because they are fine. Like, E2 is a little bit more you know, kind of maybe hire employees a bit faster, right? I think that we want to see, you know, kind of employees ramped up. You know, usually in E2 business plans, we show employees in the first couple of years, and maybe even the first year, especially certainly if you're doing a USCIS filing, you're going to show them in the first year. Whereas EB-5, you have quite a bit of time to hire the employees. You have 2 years after the I-526 petition has been approved, and the I-526 petition is going to take 3 or 4 years to be approved. So you have quite a bit of time to hire the employees. So yeah. So I think that you know, you are going to you know, kind of be, you have a little bit more flexibility, I think, with the EB-5 EB-5 direct.
And for the EB-5, do the 10 jobs, do they have to be full-time? And how is kind of full-time defined? How many hours is it?
Yeah. So great. So they do have to be full-time jobs. Part-time doesn't count, and they have to be U.S. citizens or green card holders. And full-time is defined by 35 hours a week. So yeah. So it's and it's very, you know, very strict requirement. And you have to make sure that they're legally authorized to work in the U.S. So even you know, we had a case where at EB-5 where the people submitted you know, green cards that weren't real or whatever, right? So you really, if you're doing EB-5, you want to use the E-Verify system to make sure that all of the employees that you're hiring have, you know, are actually U.S. citizens or green card holders, because if not, then you're going to run into problems when you go to remove the conditions.
And can you buy an existing business through the for the EB-5 green card?
Yeah, so not easily. So the money, the investment has to be linked to job creation. So let's go through 2 scenarios. Let's say someone decides that they want to apply for an EB-5 direct, and then let's say, you know, Samantha selling a restaurant for $1.5 million. So if the buyer paid Samantha $1.5 million, and Samantha took the money and went you know, went to Disney World and bought a condo or whatever, then that would not qualify for EB-5, because the money didn't go into the business, it went to Samantha. So it has nothing to do with job creation, it went to Samantha. But let's say that Samantha said, oh, I want a business partner. And then, you know, let's say someone, you know, Joe came along and said, okay, well, I'm going to invest $1.5 million into your business. And it was put into the business bank account. Joe took whatever percentage of the shares back, and then you know, they went from there. That could qualify, because the $1.5 million in that case was going towards job creation. So the you know, the investment has to be linked to job creation, or it won't you know, or it won't qualify.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ian. These were all the questions we got. So thank you so much for all the great information.
Perfect.
And
No,
thank you everyone for joining us today.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you, Michaela. Okay, take
Bye.
care.